Good afternoon, greetings, and welcome. I'm Mr. Woodard, Director of Student Services at Ben Davis High School. On behalf of the DELT, the District Equity Leadership Team, we want to thank everyone for joining us live now and those of you who will watch the recording at a later time. Today marks our third MSD of Wayne Township Staff Circle on race, equity, and inclusion with an emphasis on Black educators. American history is Black history. And what better way to celebrate Black history than to celebrate Black educators who are charged with the responsibility of educating future generations. Before we get into our talk with our distinguished educators, a few housekeeping rules. This session is being recorded and will be posted by the end of the week to our Wayne Equity YouTube channel, where you can find a recording of this video along with several others that help to reinforce and remind our students, staff, families, and community we are committed to this work. If you would like to submit a question to the panelists, please go to equity, that's EQUITY .wayne.k12.in.us. Again, that's equity.wayne.k12.in.us, and complete the form, and we have someone available to share those questions with me, or someone will get back with you with an answer after the session. Unlike past circles, today's session will be in a conversational manner. So no one question will be directed to a specific person. Last but not least, tweet your comments, quotes, and thoughts using the hashtag #WeAreWayne. Please help me welcome our distinguished panelists for the hour. Panelists, as I call your name, please wave your hand. First, we have Mr. Dante Brown, who's administrator at Ben Davis High School. We have Mr. Damon Black, who's an administrator at Lynhurst. We have Miss Melony Boyd, who's an elementary instructional coach. We have Mr. Stephen Jackson, who's a township district social worker. We have Mr. David Johnson, who's a math teacher at Lynhurst. Mrs. Jennifer McCann Thomas, who's ESL teacher at Westlake. We have Mrs. Takeisha Reed, who's a Thrive teacher here at Ben Davis High School. And also we have Miss Faith Sherrill, kindergarten teacher at North Wayne. So as we are aware, it's February. Panelists and guests, thank you guys for being here. This is February, as you guys are aware, outside being the coldest and shortest month of the year, it is also the month that we celebrate Black history. So panelists, as you reflect on Black History Month and knowing American history is Black history, what gets you excited about Black history, and what is your wishes, or what do you wish everyone knew about Black history or Black History Month?
I can start off. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
What we're portrayed in the media. I'm sorry, man, I'm frozen. Just reminding ourselves that we're more than what we're portrayed in the media is really important to me. It's really important to our students and to our image across America.
So, yeah. Brian, you broke up on a little bit there, but you're saying, hey, Black History Month, going into the history, provides kind of a counter narrative to what's portrayed in the media today? Correct.
Right. Let me, if I can jump in, I'm gonna piggyback off what Dante was saying. To me, it's opportunity to expand the narrative. I think that's what Brian was saying. I want to expand on that as well. Is to, a lot of times you hear about Black history, you hear about being descendants of slaves and slavery, and I take it as opportunity to say we're more than just descendants of slaves. We're descendants of kings and queens, and particularly now when you're seeing that Black history is under attack, where like literally people are wanting to no longer celebrate Black history. That to me is that is almost like a badge of honor in a sense to me, because that tells me that that people don't want to know about Black history, and we don't want to know about something is when you are afraid of something or something, information to get out. And I want to make sure that that information continues to get out. So when I see that Black history is under attack, and when you see across the country that people want to ban Black History Month in like up in Michigan and other places, that to me tells me that we even have more of a fight on our hands when I hear things like that going on. So I just want to put that out there as well.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Did any of the other panelists want to jump in? I mean, if I'm hearing you guys right, it's like, hey, Dr. Carter G. Woodson started Negro History Week, and Black History Month has been going on for decades now. And if I'm hearing Jackson and Brown right, the need is still here as much as important it is then it is now. Ms. Sherrill, you got something to add in on that?
Yes. Personally, what excites me is just being able to, share with not only my students and having that just the month of time to, tell them not just about slavery or different things that happen like that, like what we invented, and continuing to, as we teach them, it continues on for generation to generation, and them being able to, explain and understand who the important people were in that time. So, and during those times. So I just think that's what excites me for my students, and them getting excited for it and them passing it on from generation to generation and not stopping it.
So if I heard Mr. Sherrill, Mr. Brown, and Mr. Jackson, you guys kind of talked about we were more than just slaves in history, and I think Jackson talked about coming from kings and queens. We're talking about our own racial identity. So how did you guys come to understand your racial identity, or how does your racial identity impact your work as an educator?
Sherman, I'll start. I feel like growing up, my parents wanted us to know about Black history because at that time it wasn't heavily publicized or taught in school. So my sister and I, we had Black History Month flashcards. And so we had to learn about George Washington Carver. We had to learn about Dr. Charles Drew. We had to learn about Garrett Morgan. And so I think as a Black educator, it is so, so important to keep your identity in mind. You're here for a reason. And I think it is so great for students to see us, and even on this panel, and our diversity. And if it wasn't for those experiences, me personally, that significantly impacted the way I teach students, and also the way I interact with those who are trying to find ways to embed the teaching of Black history and Black History Month.
Thanks for sharing. So Ms. Boyd, you said your family kind of put this on you and flashcards and everything, so you kind of brought to the profession. What about anybody else to share about your racial identity, or how does your identity impact your work as an educator?
Well, Sherman, if I could, to piggyback on what Melony was speaking on, my parents were the focal point. I mean, they were the driver of all things as far as with my identity. Specifically, they were both educators, or still are educators, and it was very important for them, education number one, but also to know and to have that self-efficacy, that self-confidence of where you're from and what you have is not less than. It may be different, but not less than. And that really, as far as my path to education, really impacted me, because I was in a private school, K through 12. And kindergarten through, I think, 7th grade, I was the only Black male in my entire class up to that point. And my father made it a point. He's like, look, every February, you're going to make this report and you're going to say it in front of your class. Every January, you're going to make this report and we're going to talk about Martin Luther King, even though that wasn't part of the curriculum of the school that I was actually in. And, basically that family structure, that it may not be in the book, but that doesn't negate its importance to it needing to be learned, is something that I try to translate, even in math, to my students.
Woodard, if you don't mind, I was going to chime in. For me, I feel like I've always known my identity as being African American. Definitely my family did not shy away from some of the challenges that come along with being African American and growing up. So it just kind of leaves me now as an educator just feeling more compassion for students who might be misunderstood, students who might be going through rough times, feeling like they don't fit into some of their peer groups. And it just lets us reach out and make sure they know that someone listens to them. I had someone do that for me, and I feel like that's what brought me into the field of education, feeling like a minority in such a larger group. So,
Thank you.
You know what, Ms. Reed, I'm glad you said that, because we can't, if we're gonna have a real discussion, let's have a real discussion. So let's not sugarcoat what it means when we say racial identity. Also, what that means from a societal aspect, a societal point of what it means to be Black when you're younger as well, and the stereotype that tends to come along with that as well, particularly in education, if we want to go down that route as well. So let's not, you know what I'm saying? I want to make sure that we speak on that as well, is that when we talk about racial identity, particularly in America, when we talk about race, you know, that's a social construct, and we tend to be the darker you are, the less society believes in you, if you will. And when we're talking about Black people in particular, there's negative stereotypes that comes along with that as well, and your expectations are lowered, and that can expand over into the classroom. That can expand over into health. That it can expand over into criminal justice, and let's not gloss over that as well. That so when our children, that are Black children, are looked upon, and then when they're identifying themselves as being Black, what does that mean to them as well? When we're talking about psychologically to them, what does that mean to be Black? If they've been put into their mind that being Black is a negative thing, then what does that mean to them? And me as a Black educator and as a social worker, it is my job, I feel like, to make sure that I build them up to understand, to counter what they feel, what they've been identified as what it means to be Black. Because to them, many times they've been told Black is negative, Black is wrong, Black is this, Black is that, Black isn't something that's positive. Whereas I'm here to tell them, no, Black is beautiful, Black is strong, Black is powerful, Black, this is what Black is. I am Black. I am a Black man. So this is what I want them to know as well, is when we're talking about racial identity and what it means to be Black in education. So I just want to make sure that we put that out there as well, that there is a negative connotation that comes along with it. And let's not gloss over that as well. Okay, that when our kids come into some expectations are lowered because of the color of their skin. And so it's up to us, all of us, no matter what color skin you are as an educator, to make sure that they build it up. And we have to identify that those kids are facing those barriers when they come into our classrooms. Because if we don't identify that and understand that does exist, then we're failing them as soon as they get across that door. So I just want to put that out there.
Stephen, I completely agree with you. I think we've got to, sorry, Sherman, we've got to counter this narrative, right? We've got to counter this narrative that our children are seeing in the media. And we want to allow our students and all our children to see these positive, influential African Americans, not just those who are doing rap videos or in athletes, or the media will portray high crime, or we want to see those that aren't heard of. And so I think that is the hard job, is countering the narrative, because the narrative is there. It's just what our kids are seeing and what we can do as educators to counter that narrative. And I think all of us counter that narrative every day. And so thank you, all of you.
Ms. Reed?
I was going to say, just going off of what Mr. Jackson said, I think that we get that so much, even growing up in our education system. When you hear about Black History Month, you get so much more about slavery and so much more about everything that we've had overcome. And I like to use this opportunity to turn the story into a story of empowerment, of strength, of someone who can get through anything, someone who is strong. And I try to instill that into the kids, as far as we have come, as far as our ancestors have come and gone through, that there's so much that they can achieve, and that they come from a very strong group of people, and there's nothing that can hold them from getting things done.
Does anybody else want to comment? I did want to just quickly piggyback on Mr. Jackson with the identity. I think I'm just to hit a nerve with me. I mean, I got the Black history growing up, and the family was, I mean, Black power all the way. Then I went to integrated school system, and I got a counter narrative. I mean, Black was, I mean, what I took was being silly and funny in class, or being the tough guy, and a lot of the negativity. And I took on a lot of that as identity. And honestly, until I came back and started working with youth, that I realized like what a Black king and queen and leader was supposed to be and whatnot. So it was a weird transition for me, because I mean, I got that foundation, but it seemed like the dominant narrative in society was, I mean, you know, rappers. I mean, I wanted to be a thug, if you will. I mean, I thought that's what Black was. So I appreciate Mr. Jackson, you sharing that as well. Did anybody else want to comment on that before we move on to the next question?
I would. With what I think everyone on this panel and those that I know personally and then have heard of professionally, I'd be comfortable in stepping out there and stating that as we approach our instruction on a daily basis, whether it be an administrative role or a teacher role in front of the students, that we're keenly aware of that impact. Where I look at it, and going back to what you were saying, Ms. Jackson, as far as like having a real conversation, I mean, 80%, 77% of our teaching staff are female. And out of that, I think 80%, right around 80%, correct me if I'm wrong, but are don't look like us, are not people of color. Mm-hmm. So we can have this conversation, and we can be very passionate in what we do. And we can let individuals know, you know, what it is that we feel is important or what's not important. But let's be real. Most of the students that come through Wayne Township don't get teachers that look like us. Most of them will never have that. So how is it as educators, not just what we do in the classroom, but also how we affect our peers to help make this more of a global type of effect? What do we do as educators to impact them? That's where I feel like there's going to be more bang for my buck. Because if you're talking about not having a real conversation, we've all sat through those PDs with our peers to the side of us, hearing things that are about equity and anti-racism. However, you go down the hallway the next week, you're hearing and seeing the exact same activities. Mm-hmm. So how, as educators, do we attack that?
And I'm gonna join what can I be heard? Am I heard right now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. It said, how does it impact your work? I'm gonna go back to the question. It impacts everything that I do. So the work is seeing that that Black male, that Black female, and knowing that that's me, or that's my sister, that's my father, that's my mother, and making sure that equity is put in place. So that's a passion, I guess. So you say, how does it affect your work? It affects the fact that I'm an educator is because that I came up through the system as a minority, as a Black man, is the entire reason that I am an educator. So therefore assuring, when I was a classroom teacher, that those students in my classroom were treated with as much fairness as possible. And as an administrator, making sure the students in my building are treated as fairly as possible. Therefore, I'm an advocate. I'm an advocate for all students, but I'm keenly aware that there are certain sets of students who need that advocacy more because they may not have that voice because of the way the system is set up. So I think all of us can, it's not about keeping it real. Your realness is whatever, your realness is, and whatever the reason you came into this game for. But I came into the game to specifically make sure, because of my racial identity, that those who identify get as much equal opportunity as possible. But I knew I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, so I thought in order to change the system, one way is to be a part of the system.
Absolutely. I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Brown. Move on to the next question. But I want any young people out there listening, we need more educators of color. I mean, it's a great profession. I mean, you're able to be a role model, encourager, empower, and you learn so much. So, hey, you guys sitting off them college applications and all that, don't forget the School of Education as well. But to our panelists, what keeps you up at night when you think about your children and other Black children in terms of education?
Sherman, I hope you can hear me. Right now, what keeps me up at night is the effects of the pandemic. I look at children of color across this country. They're the ones that are being impacted the most by this. You know, as I watch news nightly and you hear about different school districts or, you know, around the country, a lot of the ones that are shut down that are doing remote are the ones that serve students of color. And it just devastates me knowing that, and I see it here, that kids are getting farther and farther behind. And it's a tough situation. I don't want to get into the politics of it. I know that you can find, you know, people that are strong advocates for, you know, staying remote learning, and obviously you can find people that feel that that's something that we shouldn't be doing. But to me, right now, that's what's bothering me the most is I know that children of color oftentimes don't have the resources to help supplement the stuff that they're missing. As you would find in your more affluent suburban school districts and communities. So that's the big thing for me right now.
I would say isolation. I'm raising a 4.5-year-old Black male son. And, you know, just would they or someone respond differently if they knew he was my child, if he was misbehaving one day, or if he was doing something he wasn't supposed to do. And that fear, I thought that we were further along than what we are. And I'm hoping that narrative will be different, but I definitely would say I would never want him to feel isolated. So that keeps me up at night. It keeps me up at night. Will he have a culturally responsive teacher, no matter his or her color? Will they be able to provide him with diverse experiences, no matter who they are? Will he be the only brown boy in his class? Those things keep me up at night, because we know when you are the only person who looks like you, it can be very isolating and it can make you question who you are. So those are definitely the things, Sherman, that keep me up at night.
Thank you. Mr. Black kind of alluded to this about the what some call an achievement gap, other calls an opportunity gap. In your opinion, what will it take at the classroom, school, and district level to close, obliterate, get rid of these gaps?
I'm going to start with, I will say it, in Wayne and definitely at the high school, that gap is not there where it is in other school districts and other places around the country, and in concern of, especially in concern of graduation rates. So I do feel at times very proud that we're always trying to improve the graduation rates, but our kids, our Black kids are performing, and Sherman, you can kind of vouch for some of this in your position, but as well with graduation as other students in our district. There are other areas, not achievement, that are disproportionate, but our kids are performing.
One thing that
no, go ahead, Mr. McCann. I'm sorry.
Sorry. One thing that I think about a lot is the access that Black students have to everything, all opportunities, experiences that this being on the same level as white students, and what that means for them, whether that's course placement as they move up into secondary schools, or it's enrichment in the unit or the lesson. What is that doing when we look at data and then we say, oh, well, this student we're going to keep them in this category. Well, why? Because we know that all of our students come with greatness inside of them. And so if we are constantly keeping them put down into this category and we are not lifting them up in our instruction, then what are we doing to them? And so I don't know. I think that we've talked about diversity in our staff, and I think it was you, Mr. Johnson, that talked about the percentage of teachers of color. And if we stay at that same percentage and there's not enough inclusivity and thought and perspective among our colleagues, then who is the decision making? Where is that coming from? And that impact on our students of color, if all of the decision making is coming from a majority of white educators that unless they are really deep in this work, how can they best provide what our students need?
If I can just add on to that, I think kind of summarize like what everyone's saying is, we have to first acknowledge that there is systemic racism in education that lends itself to the achievement gap that we see with our children. I mean, if we have to acknowledge that exists, if we can acknowledge that there is systemic racism that exists in education, then we don't acknowledge that the history that exists there, that where the kids are coming from, the family, the family structure and everything that comes with that, the lack of acknowledgement of K through 12 educational racist history. If we don't acknowledge that at all, then the achievement gap is always going to be there. I'm sorry. We're never going to achieve with everyone because we don't acknowledge what it has done to the families that we're serving, that they're coming from. That's first of all. We also have to acknowledge that the systemic racism that exists also seeps into the teacher preparation programs that are out there as well. We have to acknowledge that as well. That's part of the systemic racism that exists in education. The lack of universal access to internet. We have to acknowledge that. Wayne has done a wonderful job with the MiFis and everything, but we're talking about across the board when we're talking about systemic racism in education. So if we acknowledge that exists, therefore we acknowledge that, yes, every kid that comes in here is not on the same level, and that we have to put in place things that really do assist the child where they are without judging them where they are, without placing judgment on the child where they are, and assisting them to get to where they need to be. And that's where I come from. And that does include identifying policies and procedures that may be in place currently that may disproportionately affect children, Black and brown children, and children of color as well. That has to be a part of it as well.
Thanks for sharing, Mr. Jackson, man. I want to piggyback on what Brown had said about Wayne Township, Ben Davis High School specifically. We've eliminated a lot of the access challenges for students by having open enrollment. Students can select classes that they want to be in. They don't have to go through a bunch of red tape and craziness in order to get in those classes. And those are greatly contributed to our rise in our graduation rate, greatly contributed to our not really having a access gap in our higher level courses and things. Still, there's much work to be done on achievement. We're looking at students scoring 3, 4s, and 5, looking at our ISTEP data and things of that nature. But Jackson, you talked about systemic racism, and a lot of hot topics come to the forefront regarding that topic. COVID-19 has revealed how systemic racism plays out in the health field, systemic racism in the criminal justice field. We've seen on TV racism leading to death, unemployment, housing, etc. Knowing these racial disparities have always existed, but are now being brought to the forefront, what do you see as your role, both personally and professionally, and the role of white educators who say they want to be allies or accomplices?
I'll go. I would like to say that, sometimes I think because it's coming to the forefront due to COVID-19, I feel like a lot of people are starting to understand it and see it a lot more than they did, which they want to reach out and, what can we do? How can we help? And I think, like it was said before, a lot of people can say it, but it's acting on it. It's being able as an educator to have an uncomfortable conversation with someone that you may feel or you see them doing things that they said, they wouldn't want to be a part of, with children or in the school system, and making sure that you hold them accountable and being able to have those uncomfortable conversations, because I think that's the biggest thing. People are nervous to say, oh, I don't think, why would you, do this, or why would you do that? Or if you're going to say we're going to try to make this better, why are you treating this child this way? And I've seen a lot of situations where people are like, oh, I'm going to be there and do this and do that. And then, like you say, the next day they come in and, they're treating that child horribly again. So I think it's just like being able to step out and everyone did lots of protests and different things like that and being a part of that. But what are you doing individually to help where you are, whether it be in school, out of school, professionally and personally?
I think that anytime we're talking about any of these systems, that education is the key, because misinformation spreads like wildfire. And so we can be the change in that, also making sure that we always have the most up-to-date information. We are having those conversations and spreading truth and spreading facts, so that the only thing bombarding the public is not just that misinformation, but we are there to be reactive and proactive against it. But just making sure that we're intentional, we're having those conversations with people, and we're including others in that, so that those people that do want to be allies and they do want to be advocates, they are also armed with those same facts.
Thank you.
I found myself with everything that happened over the summer of 2020 and coming back into the school system, and we knew that what happens out in society always bleeds into our classrooms, and we have to help the students discern. And just like we are trying to sort everything out about what's going on, we know our students are also trying to do that as well. And I think the big part for me was just trying to educate myself more. Like Ms. Thomas said, I needed to have the right information about systemic racism. I needed to know the truth about what it meant, what oppression was, get more education about the politics that were happening around us, so that when I did want to bring that knowledge to my coworkers, to my peers, to my students, that I knew what I was talking about when I spoke on it. So I found myself on a journey a little deeper. I think everyone has, learning more about what's been going on in the world around us. We've all kind of become a little more aware of what's going on, and to share that when someone says, what can I do to help? We definitely, just like she said, we want you to speak out, and we have to definitely speak truth to power. And when you see it, say something. And it's so embedded in our society that, like Mr. Jackson was talking about, some of those systems that we don't even realize that we are doing. I mean, we could be doing it ourselves as well, because even though we want to help our students of color, we still grew up in the same system, and we're still a part of that system. So we have to educate ourselves so that we can identify when we are excluding them in certain ways through curriculum or through policy or anything else. So that's just one of the main things, just reading more and talking more, definitely.
Just to say a little bit on that, Ms. Reed, I would advise everyone, I know Dr. Butt sends out a lot of emails, but his legislative emails are very important. If we're talking about systematic racism and change, what they're doing downtown in Indianapolis is a bunch of that, and we are voters, so I won't get on that kick too much. But when we're talking about informing ourselves to read, you can read it from Dr. Butts, or you can go get the information on your own. But we really need to read on what's going on downtown, from funding to policies, because unfortunately we don't make a lot of those in our school systems.
I know what you were saying, Ms. Reed, as far as, educating ourselves, I'm 100% and am an advocate for that. But then when speaking, truth to power, speaking for myself, I know that's a real tight rope that myself as a Black male must walk, because so quickly the perception is the angry Black man. And so I have to balance, speaking truth to power, the betterment for the students, what I feel is right, but then also what type of social capital am I going to sacrifice in doing that? And that social capital is what keeps me able to maneuver and have some sort of influence among my peers. So just how far can I push? What I really want to do, as far as even in Black history and in light of George Floyd and everything that's going on, is I really need to catch myself so I'm not venting. When someone's asking, okay, let me make sure that I'm giving them some information, some actionable information that they're going to be able to apply. And I'll leave the commentary if they want to call me later. But as a peer, I feel like, sometimes we're placed in this role as educators, not only to be content masters and not only to be, the social workers and everything with our students, but sometimes we have to be the Jackie Robinsons of our peers. And that's a lot of times that's just a lot to take a lot of times. I'm just going to be real honest about that. Sometimes I just have to smile and keep walking.
David, I would agree with you.
Mr. Johnson.
Oh, sorry, Sherman. I would totally agree with you. This pandemic has almost been a year, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting the day after January 6th. It's exhausting in June, and then I have to still come in and teach or coach or support. And so I think you're right. There is this fine line. And as you think about your allies, maybe there is a conversation of, okay, this is just me venting to you as a colleague, a trusted colleague, and then this is where the information is, because both are important, but it is very easy to get overwhelmed by the demands of teaching in a pandemic and being a Black educator. All of those are extremely hard things to do day to day.
Yeah, I'm just listening to you guys. What collectively you said, hey, as a Black educator, you got to go and learn more than your pedagogy and classroom and your subject. I got to go back and learn Black history and oppression and racism. Then I got to become comfortable having uncomfortable conversations with my peers. And then I got to play this role of not upsetting, rocking the horse too much, rocking the boat too much and whatnot. So how do you guys find supports in this journey of giving to the community and also empowering yourselves in the community? How do you find supports to help you through this process?
Can I say something real quick though? Just imagine how hard it was for those that came before us that didn't have the supports that we actually have right now. Just imagine. I'm with you all 1,000%, but I can't imagine how hard it was for those whose shoulders we're standing on right now, right? Just imagine years ago, our people, our Black educators that came before us, what they would look at and see this Zoom right here happening right now, that we would be in Wayne Township on February the 22nd, 2021, having a discussion about voices of Black educators. Imagine this 60, 70 years ago with this discussion, what would it look like? So imagine, so when we talk about it's hard for us, and it is hard for us, Lord knows it's hard for us. We wake up every day but we keep it moving, and I thank everyone on this panel for all the work they do. But just imagine how hard it was for those whose shoulders we're standing on right now. So you know what I'm saying? Just, even though the road is hard and it's tough, man, we gotta keep moving forward, because if we don't, who will? And I'm just gonna put that out there. But go ahead, Sherman. I apologize.
No, I appreciate you saying, hey, the first few legs of this was was even tougher. So hey, take the baton and keep running, keep moving is what we got to keep doing. I definitely agree. But I would say that in different places, I imagine it is as challenging now as this 40 years. It's people in this township that's the only person of color in their building, which would be very similar to when DSEG started up or whatnot. But I definitely appreciate that. But what are the ways that you guys find to support yourself through professionally to keep as an educator with those extra duties as a Black or educator of color? What type of supports or self-cares are you guys involved with?
Sherman, I think we are in the self-care mode right now. District Equity has provided that for me from a professional level, and being able to have conversations with many of you guys and many text messages, and being able to reach out at any time. So just personally, thank all of you. And this is for me, a little bit of self-therapy, just having these panels monthly.
I was going to say the same thing, that we have each other, and that is a huge support. And besides that, I think that there are so many more resources now that, so like if I don't have the emotional bandwidth to give of myself, I can provide a resource for somebody. And I say, you know what, go read this, go watch this, go listen to this, because right now I don't have it in me to give my story, but I can give you this.
Anybody else want to jump in on that? Okay, so why is Wayne equity work important? I know you guys just talked about how it's like it's a support network, but why is this work important to you, and why should anyone else care about this work?
I think it was on one of the community circles recently where I watched us disaggregate data in Wayne, and I believe we have 72% of our students are students of color. And so we think about why this work is so important. It's because 72% of our students look like us, and they have needs, and they deserve equitable experiences. And us as adults, someone mentioned earlier, we have to become comfortable being uncomfortable with these conversations. And I also think on an earlier circle, it was mentioned that there will be some possible shifts in the hiring process so that folks that are hired in Wayne know that teaching culturally responsive instruction and equitable practices is a must if you want to be here. And I think Wayne has done an extraordinary job of that. And I think that's a definite first step, is recognizing the students that we serve, and then also coming alongside folks to be sure that they are wanting to serve our population.
I've had the great opportunity that I'm extremely happy to do. Weekly, I meet, I'm part of a teacher leadership group that's working to discuss race, power, and privilege at the high school. And we meet in small groups and just kind of, I just describe it as a series of uncomfortable conversations that have made me much more comfortable with my peers. It was just necessary for us to kind of discuss how society has played a role in our life, discuss our perspectives, our viewpoints, implicit and explicit biases that we may have. And those are things that are really uncomfortable to talk about. But being able to talk about them allows us to see each other in a different light. And I think that it's just kind of made it a stronger team of people who are working to just help students that come from so many diverse backgrounds.
So Sherman, with what Takeisha talked about, I believe the district equity has brought that to different buildings, maybe not all buildings, but going back, looking how long the work has been going on, it's brought that conversation on the building level. It's brought it on the district level. I mean, I think of, as Ms. McCann Thomas, you talked about the hireability process, how it has changed and evolving, and trying to change the hiring process and recruiting process to change and evolve. Those come from conversations, serious conversations, tough conversations, crying and yelling conversations that we've had from a district level. And while we're not there yet, there's programs like we have with IEPUI that can help paraprofessionals, become teachers, because we know our classified staff is a higher rate of minorities and Blacks in our classified than it is our certified. So we have that potential in our buildings. How do we get our, our classified to certified? So I think the original question was the importance of the district equity. We could go on, but I think some of those policies and working with recruiting and hiring, the conversation is on the table. As Jackson said, to call out this systematic racism that has existed in all townships, in all school districts, including ours. I think it's been called out, and now there is some action being done. We're not there, so I don't want anybody to mistake and think that I'm saying we're there, but there is action that is being done. And Sherman started a long time ago, because the high school had access to those, as he said, the AP courses a long time, even before this discussion was started. And I don't think other people in the township even knew. So shout out to Mr. Woodard.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Brown. I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Harris here. For the equity work, allowing us to come read materials, to look at our profession, what we do through an equity lens. Remember workshops, we're bringing in data from discipline, from advanced courses to special services, and looking at all that through a disaggregated lens on how our policies and procedures are bearing out and what kids are where, and keeping this conversation going and this empowerment movement going is definitely a shout out to Dr. Harris and Dr. Butts for allowing us to go as well. As we wrap up, I'm gonna have just a whip around with each of you guys, and just one last minute thoughts or words, sentence or two you'd like to share as you amplify your voice as a Black educator. I wish to go around the horn there. I'll call you out. I'm gonna go by what's on my screen here. Coming to Miss Jen McCann Thomas first. Miss McCann Thomas.
Thanks for having us here tonight. I just think that no matter where you are on your equity journey, that racial literacy and critical racial literacy is so important. So wherever you are, keep reading, keep learning, keep growing, and keep working, because our students' lives depend on it. And sometimes it is a matter of life and death. And we have the power to make the difference if we're willing to do the work.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Reed.
Hey, Mr. Woodard. I am so thankful to be on this panel too. I just wanted to say, we just got to continue the conversation. We just got to continue pushing along. And like she said, everyone's in a different place in their journey. As long as you've started the journey, right? As long as you've taken those first steps, that's important. And the whole time we're keeping the students in mind. And I'm just so thankful to be in Wayne and to see this happen and see the diversity. I came through Wayne a few years ago, and the amount of students of color that are currently, and the amount of diversity that is in the staff was not there when I was coming through the school system. I'm just so hopeful for the future and what we have in store for our students.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing today. Mrs. Boyd.
Thank you, Sherman, and thank you, everyone. It really has been a pleasure to learn from you guys. I would definitely say three things: keeping a window, keeping a mirror, keeping a sliding door. And Jen alluded to this with the texts that you choose are great places for you to provide equity work with your kids. So keeping a mirror, a window, and a sliding door. So that means texts that mirror your experiences, a window, allow other experiences for kids to see, and then a sliding door, allow them to step into those worlds. And keep up the good work, everyone. We're doing great things. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson?
Yes. First of all, thank everyone on this panel. You all are doing great work. Keep doing great work. Real quickly, to destroy a people, you don't educate as children. I'm going to say that again. To destroy a group of people, you don't educate as children. That's the reason why I left from the private sector and government sector to get into education, is because to me, education is the great equalizer. To grow a nation, you develop as children. And education is the one thing that can never be taken away from us, ever. ever. You can take the cars, clothes, house. You can take a lot of things, but you can never take a person's education. So therefore, I thank everyone here for their work that they're doing to ensure that all children are afforded the opportunity to be educated. So thank you all. I salute you.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Brown?
I'm going to get back on the systems and what I was really on. Please educate yourself on policies. I was in other positions before I came to Wayne Township. What they are doing, once again, on a local and federal level is affecting what we're able to do. Those systematic changes by not funding what we're doing in public education is huge. We have to educate ourselves. We have to have a movement. We have to do what they did in Georgia to get their senators in order to get the Congress the way that it was wanted. We have to do that on a local level, and we have to educate our families, our community on who is voting for our children. And I just think that that's imperative. We cannot overlook that. What we do in our classrooms is nice and fine and dandy, but when they take the funding from us and they don't give us the tools to educate, we can't do what we know. We can't do what all we know is right. So please don't overlook that. Please know what's going on locally. And Dr. Harris, maybe at some point we can start to combine, since everybody's kind of having an equity team in their districts, somehow we need to form together and have a louder voice and let them know, and let our politicians who we vote for know that we're together for equity.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that, Brown. Ms. Sherrill?
First, I want to say thank you. I'm so appreciative of being on this panel today, just learning a lot from everyone. I definitely want to say just as a whole, we need to continue, like you said, learning, growing, reflecting on ourselves and others, and or just continuing to be that positive role model. I'm a kindergarten teacher, so my children are very small, but to be able to have a child that says my teacher looks like me, and showing them that positive role model in their life and showing them what their future can look like is always going to be the amazing thing. So just keep on pushing, even through the negative things, even through whatever else may happen as far as COVID may go or whatever, and those things being taken away from us and the funds possibly being taken away. But our love for our children and what we want for them is what should keep pushing us forward.
Thank you, Ms. Sherrill. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Woodard. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to share this time with you. It has definitely been a blessing, professionally and personally. But I do want to say that, like everyone said, I mean, with an all-star panel like this, you come up on the end. I mean, everybody took all the good stuff. So what I will say is that honestly, it is about continuing to improve upon yourself, being the lifelong learner that we always see on the posters and everything. But like Mr. Jackson said, with education, it is essential. Black History Month, it's a highlight. I enjoy my peers looking at me for something new. And honestly, I like listening to you guys about hearing something new. Every Black History Month, I learned something new. And that's something that I can put in my toolbox as far as because we are the most impactful people in many of our students' lives. And to have that story, to have that extra narrative, to make that relational, that rapport with that student, that could be the breakthrough, that could make them love statistics instead of being a statistic. So, and with that, I just, again, wonderful night. This has truly been a blessing to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Black?
Yeah, thank you as well for being on panel. I'm a firm believer that, and this is what I've enjoyed being on this panel, is just being able to really listen to some quality educators, very, smart, dedicated individuals, and I think, people just in life needs to listen more. Kind of stealing from Dante a little bit, from a political standpoint, we need to be more involved. I know as I've gotten older and hopefully wiser that know more about the issues, and I think public education is under attack, and there's that hurts our children more than anything, because the majority of our children do go to public education. So I appreciate Dr. Butts. I know he often sends a lot of emails where he's talking about what's going on in the state legislature. I do try to, make it a point to look at some of that material, because that's going to impact us, and it's going to impact our kids. And it's important that we get involved and to write our representatives. And I know that's something I've started doing over it started about 4 years ago, where I kind of feel like I need to express my opinions on things and to have that voice out there. And I forget who said it, but I do want to give them credit. I look back at I recently talked about John Lewis and what individuals like him had to go through, beaten and jailed. It's tough right now, but I look back with what they went through, and I can't even imagine having to, go through some of the things they had to just to be able to vote, which, since 21, I've been able to vote with no problem. And, I think it's important to, make sure we recognize that and continue to, build for that next generation. So again, thank you for being able to participate and to, hear these wonderful people say the things that they said today.
Thank you, guys. We got about 3 minutes left, and there's a couple questions in the chat. Did I get everybody? Did y'all faces started mixing around up there? Did I get everybody? Okay. If I didn't, jump in. We're gonna jump to one question. We're gonna wrap up here. A question from outside the audience. Given that we don't have the representation on the K-12 staff that we desire in the classroom where students see it most, how can we provide those diverse and culturally responsive benefits through other avenues?
I definitely think through there's clubs and activities, mentorship. I think those are the top. They come in mind, and I know the middle schools have great clubs and activities. The high schools do. I'm not as aware as the elementary, but I think we have to continue those and bring in people from the community.
Bringing in community members, you said clubs and other activities, field trips. The curriculum is critical. I mean, we can see people that look like us in the curriculum. That would be empowering. Anybody else have anything on that? So we got one more question here. Long term, how can we improve our recruiting and build a feeder system to bring up our own more diverse leadership and teaching workforce?
I'm sorry to be the only one talking, but I'm going to say one is pay. I'm just going to be honest. I've lost 3 Black male teachers in the last year and a half, and it's all pay. There are other districts. This goes back to what we talked about, private charters who are promoting and paying. I'm not saying that's the answer, but I am going to tell you that I'm personally feeling it and losing it. And Dr. Suggs, I'll be calling you tomorrow if you're listening, because I have another resignation based on pay. So sometimes when you talk about males in the system, and females are often the head of the household too, but a lot of males do base some of it on pay.
And again, I want to send a shout out to the young people listening out there. I get, as a counselor here, a lot of young people say, hey, I want to go into the field of helping people. When we think about help, when we talk about medicine, we talk about psychology, education is one of those fields as well. You can come in here and you can be a shining light, or as Mr. Boyd said, you can be a window, you can be a mirror and a sliding door for a lot of people. So please consider going to education. Panelists, I mean, you guys are outstanding. It was my pleasure and privilege to be here with you guys today. Thank you for sharing some of your experiences and dropping this knowledge on us today. It was a great time. It's 5:30. You guys take care.
Hey, William, I stopped recording.